and welcome to Faith, Final Drafts, and the F Word. I'm Darla Phillips, a host and producer, along with fellow screenwriters Sarah Hopkins and Rebecca Williams Spindler. Join us as we share our experiences navigating careers in film and television. Add in the twist that we're women of faith, entering into life's second season, and you might find yourself mumbling under your breath. Good luck with that, ladies. Follow along for some guaranteed laughs, a cry or two, and some valuable screenwriting and industry perspective. Anyone with a dream will enjoy this podcast video. Hope you join in. And remember, we gotta enjoy the journey. Welcome back to season 2 of Faith, Final Drafts, and the F Word. We're doing it.
Here we are.
We're going for round 2. Yeah. Hopefully with fewer hair flips and yes. I don't know, maybe we'll be a little more mellow. I can't guarantee that, but we're going to try. Well, today our topic, I'm going to just introduce it real quick, is the multitasking mind and how it influences our stories. But before we get into that, we're first going to talk about our updates. We'll do
Should
updates.
we introduce that?
Oh, good idea, Becky. Becky thinks we need to name. We have a mic, a group podcast mic, and
big upgrade for season 2, everybody.
Yes, it's our big upgrade. What should we name it?
Did you have Michaela?
Michaela, the mic.
Okay, Michaela the mic. Michaela the mic is here. And hopefully she's not too distracting. If she is, she will be moved somewhere next episode. So actually, I do think we're going to go with our updates first before our 3 Fs. So we met almost a year, almost to the date. I mean, was our first episode for FFF last fall. And I thought it'd be fun if we each took a moment to just give a real quick year to date update, meaning maybe where we feel like we've grown or where we've gone with our screenwriting this year. So who wants to go first with their updates?
I'll go first.
Yeah,
okay,
all right, I'll go Sarah.
Sarah, okay.
Well, first of all, thanks for hosting us again.
Oh,
it's so good to be back here. We were like on the boat ride over, like talking about all the life stuff. And that's one of the best things about us. It's like, we could probably spend a year away from each other and like come back here and it'd be like no time had passed. Even though I might have more crow's feet now.
Oh, me too.
We don't have the tape this time though. Weren't we talking about doing the
silicone tape?
No.
Yes.
You just get us, like, which is the best part of us.
We do need to disclose that there is no tape yet.
Right. But yeah, no. So thanks again for hosting us. So my year, it was kind of fun thinking about this when we started talking about this topic and an update over a year, and I'm like, wow, a lot has happened in a year, in a life capacity, but I think it's really cool how you can have a lot happen in a year as well as, from your life and all the different things that we're going to be talking about today. From a writing capacity, it's been an amazing year, actually, when sometimes you think about like the last month or two and you're like, oh no, nothing is happening in there. But all of these things,
months, yeah.
Right. And if you think about how projects progress and the life cycle of a project. So 2 very finished scripts are out into the world with producers, which is very exciting. So right now I get the fun thing of like when you check your email and they're like, oh, so-and-so is reading it, or this company passed, but they love the writing or whatever. So it's that fun part of like, your writing part is done and you're just crossing your fingers and you're like, whatever this is going to be, it's going to be. And I have total peace with it. I really hope the project Willow's Grove, I really hope that goes, because it was such an amazing experience to write and knowing that it's finished in the world. So I'm super excited about that one. And then just some new things. I have a new script that I've been writing that I've had this idea for, oh my gosh, I'm going on like 6 months now. Nice. And I can't get it down. I can't nail it. So I'm in that process of like I'm pulling it all apart to put it back together again. And there's a couple of things that I need to figure out. And there's a little frustration with that. But at the same time, it's just nice to be creative and start something new when you have these finished things that have already kind of gone through the life cycle and they're out of your hands. So I'm excited about the new things that I'm writing and even what's even coming down the pipeline. I have another little thing that I'm working on that's super fun. So that's me writing. I mean, it's amazing how much life can happen at the same time that your writing happens.
Yeah, and we'll get into that later. The life that happens behind the writing. Thank you. Okay, Becky, what's been going on in your world?
So for the last 12 months, I actually started a position with Story Terrace. So I'm one of their premium writers, and so I've been writing ghostwriting projects with clients. So I had 4 clients over the last 12 months. So I've cranked out material for that. I've worked on a rom-com holiday feature screenplay. That was a lot of fun, and it's being tweaked here and there and that sort of thing. And I worked on a short film production in August. So I was on the crew for a short film, and that I always love being on set and being on crew. So that was really great too. So doing that, and still trying to continue on with some more feature stuff and short stories. I love writing short stories. Oh, I had a short story published this year too.
That's
Oh, she
nice.
just throws that in.
Yeah,
She
yeah.
just sneaks it in. And you're also, I feel like you're minimizing the story terrace.
Yeah.
Those stories were huge stories to tackle. So kudos
Yeah.
to you on that. That's huge. So
I'm meeting so many interesting
Yeah.
people through this. The clients that I have that I'm telling their memoirs or their biographies are just really salt of the earth people. And so I feel that was, my faith piece that I was put there for a reason to help these folks tell their stories. And so that means a lot to me. So
Yeah. Okay, we'll get more into that faith piece in just a second.
Yep.
Well, you guys, I don't know how exciting my year's been. I was laughing because last year on our first episode, I was in basically finishing up a 3rd draft of May's story. Okay, here we are a year ahead, and I'm on the 3rd draft of another feature. But I also
a new thing.
yes, which is exciting.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, totally new. And also I also have a pilot that I'm working on that has been on my mind a long time. You guys know about my King Henry pilot that is still speaking to me. So that one is getting closer to being done. And then I learned a ton about editing, filming, lighting, sound, and oh my goodness, putting stuff on YouTube. Definitely learned a lot over the last year doing this. I have, I think, oh my goodness, so many new ideas that I want to write, but I'm determined to finish my feature and my pilot before I launch my brain and let it go there. and I mean, and that is the multitasking mind. We have so many stories sometimes. It's like there's so many stories in our heads. So anyway, that's kind of my year. I've learned that I actually I have a pattern. Darla writes 1st and 2nd draft before summer, and then a 3rd draft in the fall.
Yep, absolutely.
That's my pattern. So, all right. Well, thank you guys for sharing. We do this little segment where we share our 3 Fs. One for faith, one for final drafts, and one for the F word. Ooh, I almost said it. The F word.
We're going to start season 2. Guess what, people? Things have changed.
There will be F-bombs. But the frustration that we find sometimes in screenwriting or in life. And so I'm going to start with faith. And we'll go to, I guess, our final draft and your frustration, right?
Yep. So
all right.
I'm Faith.
Rebecca.
About a month ago, I was in church on a Sunday, and our pastor's sermon was all about, sharing the story of Christ and that sort of thing. And, where has that taken you in your life? And are you spreading the word? Are you telling the story? But then he also said that you need to take time to tell your own story. Have you given yourself permission to tell your story? And either your story of faith and how you've been impacted by your faith, or something that's dwelling within you. And that just really struck me like a lightning bolt sitting there. And I'm like, that's because as writers, we tend to have this, imposter syndrome thing. And it's difficult to tell people sometimes, especially if they know you in another way, like your career or whatever. Oh, you're a writer? Like it's always like a surprising thing. And our confidence level is about this big when we tell people, yeah, I'm a writer. But to have someone at the pulpit tell your story and have the confidence and have the faith and go forward and tell your story. So I just really took that to heart, and I started cranking out 3 different things within that time period to just let the floodgates open again. Because I think a lot of times we just feel like, what am I doing with this? What's the purpose of this? And just to have someone that isn't in your family give you the permission to do it. to tell your story.
Yeah.
So that's my favorite.
I love
that.
So
I
good.
love it. And yeah, and that's basically, I feel like what we're doing here is we are basically telling our story.
Yeah.
And hopefully we might be the other ones who enjoy it.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm final drafts, right?
Yes,
All
ma'am.
right. I think I talked a little bit about this in the intro, but how I'm really realizing that I do have a pattern to my writing, which I think I've always known that, but it's becoming clear. Like the last 3 years, every fall, I'm on a third draft of something. So it's like, okay, I've got a pattern, which helps me feel good about the process because we talked about how life is so crazy and sometimes we feel like we're not accomplishing our goals. But it's like, no, I do. I have a pattern, and every year I'm accomplishing my goals. Like when I have the Post-its on the wall, that's like the sign that I'm making some progress.
The Post-its on the wall and the writing sweatshirt.
Yes,
Like
yeah.
her favorite writing sweatshirt.
Which I took off.
We were so happy to see it this morning.
Lucky
When
for
she
you.
picked us up, we were like, oh, it's the writing Darla's back.
I told him, I said, if I never make it in Hollywood,
I love it.
just bury me in the screenwriting sweatshirt. And that's where you're fine. You'll probably find me in it. So, but anyway, I guess that's just my little final draft mode. Is it's crazy as life is, and as distracted as we get, it's so exciting for me to be able to track my progression. I do have a writing cycle.
That's awesome.
So, all right, that's me. All right,
Yeah,
Sarah, what's your
So,
frustration?
so my frustration. So, you know when you think you plan your life
Yep.
and you kind of think you know how the year's gonna go, exciting things of like kids launching and
Milestones.
husbands, like
Yeah.
milestone.
Yes.
Thank you.
Husband's
My,
retiring.
yeah. So my frustration this year has been unexpected things have happened. We were in an accident on a Harley, and by the grace of God, I was fully protected. But we did have a pretty nasty fall, and I got a broken butt. So like, there's lots of butt hurt jokes going on in my house right now. My sacrum is fractured right now, and I got scars. But here's the thing: I was wearing a helmet, and for all of you people that have Harleys, please wear helmets.
Yep.
And my husband was uninjured. He just like bounced off the pavement and stood up, like, because he's made of Teflon.
Yes.
And it's crazy how life will throw things at you and how you respond to them. The frustration of physically not being able to do the things that I used to.
Yeah.
I walk around like an old lady right now. But you know what? We have this beautiful life, and God's given me another day to do this. But the frustration of things not going as planned, but still having the gratitude of like, I'm still here.
Absolutely.
And it was quite a experience, and it happened at not an opportune time, but at the same time it is what it is. And my family's been super supportive. It was really cool to see my family really kind of step up and take on some more roles while we were all having these huge milestones of like girls graduating, my husband retired, and we were planning a big trip and all of the big things. And we had some other life stuff happen too, with like the sandwich generation of like moving one kid to college 1 week, and the next week we're moving parents into assisted living. So it's been a lot of stressful things that we weren't anticipating. And that frustration has kind of bled into my creativity. So a lot of the things that I really thought where I was going to be at with writing projects I just didn't have the emotional bandwidth.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, and we're so glad you're here.
When it
You're
comes to
safe.
like granting each other permission to write, we also grant each other permission to pause.
Yeah.
And you have to take that pause.
Yes.
And it's okay. And you're not defeated. You're not a loser if you take a mental or physical or life pause. We all deserve that.
This is a life journey. It's not just the writing. It's what.
Well, and the topic today is multitasking.
Yes.
Like, how do you balance
Exactly.
when you have something that unexpected, and how do you keep moving forward?
Yes.
How do you keep multitasking? So
Go
go into
we'll launch
it, Darla.
into it. That is our topic, is the multitasking mind and how it influences our story. So multitasking is a label often given as a definition or explanation of how women's minds work to tackle many things in our lives. And I'm going to say, and some men work this way too. It's not just women. But like things like we're mothers. We are always working on our family and marital relationships.
we have kids, we're in PTA, we're doing sports, church and community and work on top of all of that. So, so we kind of get labeled women. We get this label of multitasking mind. I feel like it definitely influences our writing. There's no doubt. I want us to each take a minute.
She's like, Sarah, stop crying.
No, it's okay. The tears are good. It's okay. Share maybe a week in your life.
Yeah, I'll just jump in because I think just the term multitasker sometimes has a negative connotation to it. You know, the saying, master of everything, or jack of all trades and master of none. I think a lot of women get that stamp, like, well, yeah, you're great at multitasking, but what are you really good at?
That's a good point.
And I hate that connotation because we're good at it all. Okay. You know, we're buying the groceries, we're cooking the meals, we're taking the kids to school, we're checking on homework, we're cleaning the house, we're helping, the spouse with whatever, we're helping our parents with whatever, we're helping walk the dog, we're making sure the mortgage is paid on time. All of that is captured at 110%. I don't know any moms that only show up 50%.
Exactly.
So I first of all want to say and put some glory on the multitasking, and not that we're just kind of like piddling here and piddling there. No, we're all in,
accomplishing
all of the time,
all the tasks.
right?
Yeah.
And even as our kids age out, grown and flown, leave the nest or whatever, that part of our brain doesn't go into dormant mode. We're on all the time. This is a new revolution of this industry by having more female directors on. When people walk off the set after working with someone like Greta Gerwin, who's a female director, they feel like that was family. That's what we do. Yeah. That's what we do as women when we're put at the helm. We want to make sure everybody's okay and everybody's taken care of.
Yeah.
So
we're going to break down that process a lot, because that's why I picked that topic. Because it's a plus, not a negative, to be a multitasker. Right. At least I believe so.
I do too. Yeah. So an example of multitasking in my life. So I've had, my grandmother pass away. And so I'm helping my mother with, funeral arrangements. And then, meanwhile, my daughter's getting ready to get engaged. Right? End of one life, beginning of another.
Yeah.
And then, I've got my own career that I got to check in with, and I've got emails to answer, and I've got word counts, and I've got deadlines, and I've got groceries to buy, and I have, cemeteries to call. So it's just, that was one segment of my life this past summer.
So it's probably a day.
Yeah, exactly.
In one day, you do all of those things.
Yes,
exactly.
One of the things, like, I'm a huge list maker. Like, mom's to-do list. And this summer, I basically lived and died by these things because my brain was so pulled in so many different directions. If I didn't write it down, that plate was gonna hit the floor and crack and break. And just some of the things that were on my list, it just goes to show you what happens in a day or whatever. And again, I get the satisfaction of crossing things off. Yes. So I'm like, I got to look at the cross off things, and I can always tell at the end of the day the things that I have prioritized over the things that I have not. So here's an example of a list. My number one thing was I needed to get a hold of my manager and give him an update that I'm broken. And then I have a cat box situation. So our cat, with all of the stuff going on, decided to, pee in inappropriate places. There was a cat box situation. I had to go find the enzymatic stuff or whatever. Yes. And then I had to go to Kohl's because we needed to get podcast outfits. And then if I'm out, I might as well get my TJ Maxx returns on there. Oh, and there was an Amazon return, so make sure to put that on there. I am a co-coordinator of a military family camp. And so the amount of Zooms and emails going on with that, it was like, what's the OBC agenda for the Zoom on Saturday? Buying obstacle course things for this specific camping. Oh, I have to find my lab results from Ascension because I'm going to be starting PT. Gary needs to call this because we just switched over all the doctors. So I'm putting my husband's reminders on my reminders.
Yes.
That one did get crossed off. Yeah. Yep. Oh, and we have to clean out behind our AC unit because with my daughter leaving for college, we need to have somebody come in to service it, but like all of the stuff is in there because all of her stuff from her room went next to it. Like it's just constant. Oh, I needed to follow up with this. I need to do that. I need to call that. I need to follow up with this other writer that I'm trying to mentor. I need to do this, that. And then, at the bottom of it, it's like my writing. And it's super teeny down at the bottom, and you can just tell, you know, and I actually did sit down that night and do some writing, you know, like this was a very full day, and granted, you know, everybody has this like that, and even if you don't physically see it, your brain is thinking about those things, and as a mom, as a woman, you just do. You know, I'm so envious of people that can just really put things in a box and waffle out. Like, that's going in that box. I'm not opening that until I get this thing done. And again, we've talked about this a lot. Our brains are like spaghetti. Everything's touching. Like, I am not going to be able to, like, hello, my breakdown early, emotionally be able to sit down and be creative when I have all of these other things that are important in my life. You know, I guess a cat box situation might not seem important.
Well, it is.
But it is when you walk downstairs.
Exactly.
So there's, again, like that's an example of just a tiny little snippet of, you know, one crazy day. And a lot of people would look at us and say, you know what, you're lucky to have that list.
Exactly.
And I actually kind of do feel that way. I feel very blessed. And I'm grateful that I have a list like that. I do not feel taxed by this list in a negative way. I just know that that is my purpose right now and today. Yes. And I think that's one of the things that gets really hard with writing, like the purpose behind writing versus the purpose behind what you're supposed to be doing that day as a mom, as a wife, as a, you know, a woman in this world, as somebody, a coworker, a peer. So it can be very tricky to figure out where that writing thing fits in with your priorities and multitasking that. Yeah.
So hard.
It's a great topic. It really is.
Oh yeah. I'm just gonna like go with what's in my head like right now. Like what are the things like weighing? And well, or like maybe when I was trying to go to sleep or something. I don't know. I'm a mother of 4 and we talked about this and I have not very often. and a grandmother of 13 and I've been married a long time and so I was just thinking, okay, so over the weekend I get 2 texts from 2 granddaughters who, one is going on a camping trip with her friends. And I had just watched some show about these, I listened to this podcast about these hikers on Mount Hood that like froze to death in the snow. So I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm trying to text her all these like warnings and you know, are you prepared? You have this. And so I'm like, okay, then she's fine. And then my other granddaughter who had the car accident back in January, she sends me a fiery crash. She and her friends were rear-ended going up north to go on a hike. No. And so I'm just like, okay, it's okay. Everyone's surviving, they're living. And then, I mean, so just the worries of, I mean, that's just a tiny bit of the worry we carry of the people in our lives, like our children, our grandchildren, and our loved ones, and like parents. And there's a women's organization that I'm in charge of the activities every month. And so like last Thursday, we had a big activity here where we went kayaking and paddleboarding and then, you know, that one's checked off the list, but there's another one coming up in like 3 weeks. I'm like, okay, back to the planning. And then my sister's 60th birthday is coming up on the so I'm flying to Arizona to help have a big shebang for her. And so, I mean, there's just so much family stuff. I mean, and I know that we could go on and on forever. But I think about all these things that we feel like might keep us from maybe getting our writing done, they make our writing so much richer. And that's why I think the way women's minds work contribute to great storytelling. And that's why I wanted to tackle this one. I sent you guys a picture of, it was this like a meme, and it says the way a boy tells a story, and it shows these railroad tracks just going straight right down, you know, her destination. And then it showed the way a girl tells a story, and it showed it's like all these railroad tracks, you know, intersecting. And I thought that is so true. But I think it's makes for great storytelling, and we're going to get into at the end. I do want to talk about how we feel like you mentioned a little bit in your opening that that I do think the industry is reflecting more of the way women tell stories. All right, so for me personally, and you guys tell me if you felt this way, but for years and years of my life, I did not know how to explain the way my mind works and processes before I make a decision or a plan of action. But now, as I've matured and I've learned, I understand that this multitasking way that I that I do things, and that I think most women do, the way we look at the world, has influenced how I see, tell, and write a story. I came up with my own name for it. I call it seeing things in holes or rounds. And does that make sense? So
not a hole in the ground, but holes.
Yes, like holes. Like when I see a story, I see the whole story, and I see how everything is going to affect. Okay, that's great. But try and take that whole story.
Put it in black and white words on a page.
Right.
It's torture. It's torture.
Right.
But you're good at it.
Oh, I
You're
don't thank
good at
you. Well,
it.
you're so kind. We're all good at it. It is a struggle for women or people who see story like this, because I know men do too. When you see everything and how it connects, it's so hard to get that linear story down on a page. So I wanted to bring up Frances McDormand, who I had listened to on a podcast through the Impact the podcast. So it's the Ron Howard and Brian Grazier's little podcast. It hasn't gone very far. I'm like, okay, I'm calling. Please continue your podcast. I really was loving it. Anyways, Frances was on, and she said something that was like, finally, I heard someone describe a story how I saw it. And she said, I have to go to the next page. She said that female stories are circular. And I thought, that's exactly what I've been wanting or needing to hear, that females or some males, I'm sure, see the stories are circular. They're not linear. Like, I think a lot of the structure for a 90-minute movie is a very linear, so linear. And so to me, I don't know why, that just made me feel like, you know how sometimes you feel like you're seen, like I'm not some weird frustrated writer who just can't get the words on the page how I want them to go.
And I thought that podcast was really interesting too, listening to her story, talking about it from an actor's perspective with that as well. And that podcast is really good. I think they stopped in 2020, didn't they?
Yeah,
like that, which was so sad because there were some really, really great speakers on there. Just again, this was a great example of it, and she was so inspiring to listen to. So we should for sure put that in as a link.
Yes,
but yeah, she was so. It was just really cool hearing a woman that's even just a little bit farther down the road in life talk about bringing up that next generation of storytellers and the inspiration into new female voices, and how we have the freedoms that in a creative capacity that her generation did not. And it was really inspiring. And I feel like we are, being women of a certain age, we're finally over all the BS of all the young stuff. And like, we're really looking forward to, like, we got a lot of really good years ahead of us.
Yes.
And I'm
Definitely.
super great. Right. Like, I'm so excited and grateful for that. And trying to figure out how to tell those round stories, I think is going to be really important. So it just makes me be like, oh, everything, female driven, everything. Like, let's go.
I know.
Like, it's awesome.
Yes, we'll bring all the wisdom and all the life experience that we have, and putting it into a circular story.
Right.
Well, I'm going to use a term that you used, that it's like spaghetti, everything's touching.
Yes.
And I think, in a circular view of things, when you're writing a story, everything is touching.
Yes. Yeah.
This character touches this character, this character touches this action, this character touches this behavior, this one touches this emotion. It's not linear, but it is. And if you're trying to sell your story or pitch your story, whoever's on the other end of that pitch wants to hear the linear part.
Right.
They want to hear the exciting parts
the
too.
beginning, middle, and end. Like, get
But
that out there.
right.
Yeah.
So, we have to train our brains when it comes to pitching mode.
We have to line up the spaghetti.
Yes.
And it's going to be messy.
Yes. So we, have to have in great big bold letters A, B, and C.
Yeah.
And then we can talk about the lowercase A's and B's and C's to the 10th degree.
Yes.
Right.
But so
you do have to get it out there, what it's about.
Right.
But I think what makes the story special is all the crazy spaghetti. But you do have to get your pitch out in a way that people can understand it.
Yeah.
I have found that the spaghetti part is usually the best part of it.
I think so.
But when you're pitching it, you can't put the spaghetti in there.
No.
Like, again, we got to line up the spaghetti a little
Yes.
bit. And it's knowing that you're going to have the freedom to, like, if you pitch a thing, knowing that the cool part is the spaghetti, like, you're going to have to pull out a couple threads there that that you can put in your pitch. But the main dish needs to be served. And then when you actually go to script, that's when you get to have the fun. And I've seen you do that in your writing, and same thing with you too. Like, you'll pitch an idea and we get the concept, but until you see it on the page and you're in those characters' moments that are so emotional, that's the true gift of being able to unravel the spaghetti and the roundness.
And I think that you can't even put it into words sometimes. So even if you wanted to express it, you cannot. And so I think the example I put in the notes was, I just thought of like raising a child, and you have this little baby, and we're always, as a mother, you're looking for everything. You want to raise them to have the safest, happiest life ever.
Right.
And you're doing that. You're always on the lookout for things that could harm them or things that they need in their lives implemented. But then there comes a point where this over-encompassing protection is a detriment to them. And so I guess to me, that's seeing the whole story, like when you can see beyond the obvious, like you're like, oh wait, crap, now I'm causing harm to my child because I'm in their business too much, or I'm, so to me, like the whole, that cannot always be expressed in word, but it's crazy how you can express it in the written word in some weird way, or it's by creating your characters and you put it in them and then they kind of put it out there. And so yeah, I don't even think half the time the things that are in my head I could ever even put into words what I want people to feel. I'm like, I know it's a feeling. I want you to feel this.
Right.
So
or you get the big fat thesaurus out and look up the word sad.
Yeah.
And try to find one of the 100 synonyms for sad.
The Google machine.
Yeah.
Another word for.
Yeah.
How do I say this?
Yeah.
So sometimes when people ask me if I love writing, I can't. It's painful and it's excruciating. And if anyone tells me they love it, I'm like, in my mind, then I don't want to judge, but I'm like, but you're not doing it right then, because it's painful to me. Anyway.
Those are the words that are not supposed to come out of your mouth, just in case you were wondering.
I wouldn't do that in a pitch, but I'm just saying it's the truth. For me, I'm compelled to write because of the feelings that are, but do I love it? The reason it's painful is because trying to get that circular story, that's the pain. The circular story onto the page in a
I think you love it though. I'll argue that you love it, because when you get a new idea, don't you love it?
No, I love that part of it, but
well, yes, there are various parts of writing that suck and that we don't love.
Yeah,
revision is one.
Yes, yeah.
So,
but anyway, I don't know. That's kind of what I guess for me. I was trying to think of a scenario that would kind of explain that whole seeing how everything connects, and then how you have to shift sometimes when you realize what you thought was working, that's not working. Or let's say you have an epiphany. You're so excited and you want your kids to know it, you want your husband to know it, you want the whole world to know this epiphany, but you realize nobody cares about your epiphany.
Like, it's not that big of an epiphany. Anyway, no flash in the pan.
You try to explain to somebody what you yourself have gained, and it doesn't work that way. We cannot give people our knowledge. We can't give people our wisdom. And I put in the notes, that's too on the nose. When you read a script where someone's trying too hard to get you to see, you're like, oh yeah, that's too on the nose. So part of the storytelling for me is getting the story out there with my epiphany in there without, so it's not so on the nose, so I'm not telling you what to think or feel.
Would the epiphany kind of be like the moral of the story, or the lesson of the story?
Yes, like a layered story. And I think I put in there, for me, a good story has layers of insights. And depending on when you watch it, you may or may not get it. And I did want to ask you guys that question.
That is a tall order.
Yeah. And I was thinking that's
really tall order.
How Jesus, I felt like, taught in parables, I think for that reason, because he couldn't come out and say, don't do this. Don't do that. It's because he would offend everybody. Right. So you tell a story and you hope people understand it at the level that they are ready to understand. And so that's the one thing I want to ask you guys. Is there a movie or a scripture or a book that you've reread or rewatched and it had a whole, you're like, oh, I didn't catch that the first time.
So my daughter totally got into 80s movies over the last couple of years, and it's been so fun watching those. And oftentimes you're like, wow, they do a lot of swearing. 80s movies that are PG-13. You're like, whoa, a lot of things have changed since then. Or even just the culture shifts of things. And I don't know necessarily if this is a good example of a lesson being learned or how it seems different now, but watching an 80s movie when you're in your teens versus watching an 80s movie when you're in your 40s with your teenage daughter, it was just awesome for us to have all of these really interesting conversations of how much things have changed in a very short amount of time, and things that are acceptable and not acceptable now. And just to me, it's kind of inspiring to see our youth pick up on so many things that we as teenagers were like, woo, that just like, we're like, that's just what we do. Let's all have sex when we're 16, you know? Like,
And no wonder we did.
that's the coolest thing to do.
Because that's what everybody was doing.
Right, I know, right? Like it just goes to show you how powerful media is, and granted that was a different time and that was a different acceptance level. We now are seeing all of these different points of view, like look at Lady Bird, or you know what I mean, like those kinds of things that never would have been produced in the 80s. So it's just really cool watching, you know, I don't know if that was a good example or not, but like the conversations that have happened from watching movies from different eras and watching different generations in a beautiful way. You're like, what? Now I know why you're so screwed up, Mom.
Yes.
Like,
Exactly. That's what I think the first time I sat down to watch like when I watched Grease as a kid, I was probably junior high or high school. I don't know. Half the movie went over my head. I'm like with my kids, hey, let's watch Grease. I'm like, oh,
I know.
Never mind. Let's not watch Grease. Because there were so many things I did not catch when I was a kid. I had no clue about half the stuff they were talking about. And so yeah, as we grow and mature, and as we get more knowledge and understanding, we catch maybe some, well, obviously, hopefully some more in-depth insights besides teenage sex and
Let's go there. I mean, let's just change that.
But that just goes to show that the sex and the stuff is not just from the 80s. I mean, Grease is supposed to be about the 50s.
Yes. Oh,
and that stuff will always, of course, be there. But
and I'm writing one about sex. About teenage sex. I don't know, but it's gonna have lots of insights, lots of deep insights.
Oh my goodness. That's gonna be a good one.
I don't know. So yeah, I just seriously think not just movies, but there's times where I'm in church and I hear a sermon, like you were talking about how you had that experience of the day, and sometimes the same scripture you've heard hundreds of times, all of a sudden you'll be like, oh my goodness, it just has this deeper meaning. And I think as we go through life, the kind of stories I want to tell are those stories where you might get something different every time you watch it, or every time you read it. So layered with insights, because I feel like that's what I bring to the table. I'm an old lady, and I bring some wisdom and some insight.
The movie The Notebook.
Yes,
right?
that was on my head.
Based on, the Nicholas Sparks book, The Notebook. But when I watch it now, at the age that I am now, I'm more in tune with the narrator, the guy who sits down and reads the story to his wife, because I'm getting older. But yeah, I still like to love the love story of when they were younger, and I can relate to what it's like to have someone in your family with dementia, and how important it is to tell them and retell them those stories. And so that is an example of a movie that I could watch 100 times and pick up different things each time I watch it, because you're at a different part of your life when you watch it each time. So
like that one and fried green tomatoes.
That was the one that I was going to bring up.
Yeah,
was fried green tomatoes. That
yes.
was the first one that came to my mind when you said that, and then I was like, well, what was it about that I feel like it was so different watching that, and again watching it with my other daughter this time. And it was just so beautiful. Female friendship. Like just what female friendship really truly is, and how powerful that is.
And the perspective from so many ages.
It's just so, so cool. Like, and that was probably a movie a little bit ahead of its time, I think. When it comes to themes that, and that kind of tone and what that was.
It's funny that our brains all went, when you said Notebook, my brain had already gone there.
I know. I was like, great.
And another one, Dad, like Steel Magnolias is another one.
I love that movie.
Love that movie. There's very few things I can watch over again, and so for me to have it has to have some depth to be able to watch it over again.
Right.
But yeah.
So a new movie. So my daughter was like, "Mom, you have to watch this movie," and it was Everything All at Once.
Oh, I
haven't
seen
watched this one yet?
I've seen that. Yes.
And I was like, okay, like you should be watching all kinds of different things. You just really should. If you're going to be getting into this industry, you got to know what the buzz is. You got to know all of these things. Like watch all the movies that are either contenders in any kind of academies or whatever, all the things.
Right.
But yeah, so she's like, we got to sit and watch it. She's like, you are going to ugly cry, because that's all I do now is just ugly cry. I was like, oh, really? Okay. So I kind of like saw a little bit about it, and I was like, oh, okay, let's do this. And so we sit down and we're watching. I'm like, okay. And like, there was some amazing action sequences.
Really?
I was like,
Oh.
like my action brain was all like, you know, buzzing or whatever. And then I'm like figuring out what the actual, you know, the trajectory of what the story really is.
Yeah.
And at the end, totally ugly crying. You know what I mean? The
Oh,
whole
I gotta
thing. And it
watch
was
it.
so much about a mother's love and how, what you will do for the people that you love.
Yes.
No matter what crazy thing is happening in your life or
Oh,
what other
yes.
world that's happening on.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
You know, it's just,
Yeah.
it is,
That you deal with
It
whatever
is.
is thrown at you.
right.
Yes.
It was everything touching. Like, it
Yeah.
was very much that. So I actually enjoyed that movie very much because of the trajectory of the story.
See,
Not just
my
with
daughter
her.
told me to go see it too,
Mhm.
and she was, all excited about it.
Mm-hmm.
So my husband and I went to go see it, and I had not read anything about
Oh,
I
wow.
went
That
in
probably was a shocker then.
it. Totally
Oh,
blind.
really?
I think I had gotten like maybe a 10-second snippet on Entertainment Tonight or something, and I went, and I was just like engrossed because
I was
you're
like, this is what my brain looks like on screen.
Yeah.
I
and then this, and then
I
now
gotta
she's
go
doing this,
see it.
and then
Oh,
this, and then this,
see,
and then this.
yeah.
Yeah. So it's just like,
I love it.
yeah,
I
it,
gotta
it,
see
it just
it.
feels like you're spinning a big plate of spaghetti, and
Oh, I
where's it
love
going to
it.
spin and land
Right.
next?
I love it.
And
my gosh.
so yeah,
Mhm.
and Jamie Lee Curtis,
Mhm.
I follow
Oh.
her on social media, and she talks nonstop about that movie. And the Asian actor Michelle, the two of them really bonded on screen, and they're really good friends afterwards.
Nice.
And she said it was just a really cool film for the two of them, who are 60 something,
Mhm.
to get out there and shine in their multi talents
Yeah.
on screen and behind screen.
Mhm.
And so it was just really cool
So cool. I got to
to,
watch
to
that
see that.
Mhm.
because
But yeah, and my husband stayed awake the whole time.
yeah.
Well, how do you not?
Yeah.
Oh,
You were
I
just
love
like,
it.
I was like,
Yeah.
so, like,
That-
if you have ADD, this is the movie for you.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that's seriously. Don't you ever feel like you have ADHD? Sometimes I
Yeah.
think I do have it, but I'm going to see that movie because there is the feeling that I always I've tried in many scripts to portray, and it is that moment where a woman's life is falling apart around her. And we've had those moments, and there's one that sticks in my mind. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna say it, but I'm gonna cut it out. But there was this day where I won't, just multiple hugely traumatic things. I mean, it was just like, how much can you
every world that
handle?
you had was crumbling.
Yes,
Mhm.
and the strength, it just is so surprising. The strength. I'm sure I know many men have it too, but women, we really do have this inner strength. Like, we can't break down. It's like, nope, can't break
It's this
down
weird
yet.
fortitude.
Can't break
Yeah.
down yet.
Yep.
And you keep thinking I'll break down later. And this is, I'm thinking it's
Sarah just breaks down here. It's the
No,
only
no,
place
no.
I break down.
No, I have those breakdowns, but I so much that's such an emotion that I want to portray in my stories, is that when the crap's hitting the fan and there's just nobody to I picture the scene from Braveheart. I don't know if you remember where this is
My
so
favorite
sad, where his first love is gonna get killed, and
Yeah.
and she's looking like, she's like, who's gonna save me?
Mhm.
Who's gonna save me?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that scene kills me because he doesn't get there to save her.
Yeah.
And half the time I'm like, that's my life. Like, hey, who's gonna I'm kidding. I have amazing people in my life. But you know what I'm saying, when you're trying to hold everything up sometimes, and so I'm gonna watch that movie. Thank you for that was a good pitch for
That's a good one.
everything
Everywhere, all at once.
all at once.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Sweet. Good pitch for that, and I'm watching that. If we see things circularly, we see things in rounds and holes. Things are changing. Like, how are they changing? Obviously, the movie we just talked about, big change. Television, so much serial, is that the word? Serialized?
Yeah.
Television. I feel like this opens up huge pathways for women, and the way we write, and the way we see story, the way we tell story, and we've touched about that a lot already. So I don't know. I guess that was the thing. Do we feel like it's changing in our favor.
Well, I think what you just said about the platforms changing.
Yes.
You know, we can now we don't have to cram a big story into an hour and a half. We can, you can have it as a feature, but you could take your time and tell a really big story over 8 to 10 episodes.
Yeah,
exactly.
And to have it serialized where it's building and not just the procedural case of the week kind of thing. I think that is huge. Even like if you look at web series or even just graphic novels and all these kinds of things that you can tell stories in so many different ways now that we didn't really have before, or it was like we're craving shows like that now.
Exactly.
We want the movie that lasts 10 hours. But I do feel like also, depending on what you're trying to write for a certain project, like for me, I'm writing an action feature. I'm not going to be getting too round in that one. It's and I'm not saying formulaic, but I'm just saying there's certain things that we expect as an audience of what's going to happen. Who's the villain? How are we? What is that? What's the A and B storylines? Like, let's make sure that we have those funny little beats and who the sidekick is. Like, there's certain things that you expect that in a movie. Like, I want to go to an action movie and not be like, wait, what is that? A drama?
You want to know what you're watching,
right? Like, I don't know if I want that. So for me, I feel like I do have to write a little bit more in maybe, I wouldn't say an archaic way, because we've learned, especially
traditional,
traditional. Thank you. We've learned, from the school side of learning what structure is, how to hit certain beats, and that kind of thing. But I think that I can have a really cool female-driven and voice in that linear storytelling. So in that traditional way, I can still make it very much a female story. So there's ways to do it, but that's a good point.
For me too, so I'm writing like Hallmark style holiday rom-coms, right? Which are very formulaic and they don't get very deep. It's very feel good.
Yes.
So I
what
would call it a fluffy round.
Yes.
Fluffy round.
And I do think that's a kind of storytelling maybe I could love. I need to go.
We need more fluffy rounds in our life.
We need fluffy rounds.
Yes. Coming from a fluffy round.
No. But yes, well, thank you. I mean, I can't believe how fast the time goes. I hope that made some sense. I feel like I pick all these weird, deep.
No.
I always want to dive deep on these subjects. I think it's because it's therapy for me.
Yeah. Therapy for us too.
So,
you got me to cry. So.
Yeah.
Let's talk about multitasking.
You follow us on our Facebook page, Faith Final Drafts and the F Word. Comment and tell us about your crazy multitasking life.
Yes,
we would love to hear.
Love to hear, and go away from this hopefully knowing that it's a plus.
It is
a multitasking mind.
It's a plus.
Yes, plus. All right. Well, thank you for joining, and we'll see you again next time.
Well, you made it through another episode. Thanks for joining in. For more information on our podcast and videos, be sure to check out our Facebook page with the same title, Faith, Final Drafts, and the F Word. This episode of Faith, Final Drafts, and the F Word was filmed and recorded on a small island located in southeastern Wisconsin.